Good morning and welcome back to Intermediate Writing. I am switching to a pre-recorded video format as explained because I think that is a better way to conduct the course for the last 3 weeks of the semester. Given all the problems with Zoom, not only my technical problems last time, but just the fact that doing this kind of class in the Zoom is really hard. When I teach writing classes or any classes, I like to do an interactive format where students work and discuss things in groups, and then we discuss things together. Obviously this does not transfer well to Zoom, so I'm going to move to a format of lectures plus sometimes written assignments. Probably not a lot of written assignments because I want you to focus on your final. More about that later. Today we're going to talk about using sources this week. Using sources. First, just the basics of using sources, and then next time also in terms of some of the examples that we looked at last week. So why do we use sources? Well, we need sources in college papers so that we can make more intelligent, specific, informed, interesting main points. So by main points, we're talking about the thesis. The thesis is the main idea of the whole paper. And then within the paragraphs, you have main idea sentences or topic sentences in each paragraph which support the thesis. So this thesis is kind of your main idea, your main objective for the whole essay, kind of your main argument. And academic writing is pretty much argumentative in that you are making an argument. You're trying to persuade somebody about a point. It might be just that your analysis of the problem is a good one, or your solution for this problem is a good one, or it could be more of a specific persuasive point, like we should do something, we should do X, so-and-so should do X. In relation to the examples we looked at last week, and I'll comment more on next time, a particular problem with SNS can be remedied or fixed or addressed by certain kinds of possible legal solutions and other solutions, or possible solutions to particular problems of English medium instruction policy, examples in the book that you did homework assignment on. In college papers, you're not doing high school writing anymore, where high school writing was often recycling ideas. In college papers, you don't recycle ideas. A professor I had in graduate school talking about graduate student research gave us this principle, and this applies to college writing as well. He said that any kind of writing, academic writing, should pass what he called the grandmother test. That is, it can't be something your grandmother would think of. Now, this is an American culture where people like me, my grandmother lived on a farm most of her life. That's the kind of person she was. So, of course, my professor said, well, this doesn't apply if your grandmother has a PhD in a relevant field. Now here in Korea, maybe some of you do have a grandmother who has a PhD. A college paper can't be something that just anybody would think of, whether it's a grandmother or just some unemployed guy sitting on his couch in the US, or a high school student, or a person who spends all his or her time on Facebook absorbing the latest conspiracy theories and fake news. College papers are supposed to present informed, specific, intelligent ideas. It might be a particular opinion, a particular persuasive point. It could be your particular analysis of a problem, your particular proposal for a problem, for dealing with a problem, something like that. The contents of your papers should be interesting and unique. It can't be just anything that anybody could think of, like anything a high school student would think of. It should show some original thought, uniqueness, creativity. Should be interesting or informative somehow. So your paper should be informative. Whether you're providing an analysis or trying to persuade somebody about a particular point on a political issue, your paper should be informative. It should present information that is not familiar to everybody. You need information that is not familiar to everybody, not something that anybody would know who has a high school degree. That means you need to actually read up on the topic and know what you're talking about and demonstrate in your paper you know what you're talking about. It should have some unique or original or interesting contents, at least your ideas. It should be like your own perspective on a particular problem. If you're writing about a current social issue, this is how we should handle North Korea and its military. Well, it should show some original thought. You might be advocating for a particular policy that maybe the Korean government maybe has considered. But you're providing your own perspective or ideas on it. Your own arguments. You're providing your own arguments for it. Your topic should be specific enough. So you need to read up on the topic so that you can pick a paper topic that's not too broad. Common mistakes that college students make, and this is true for native English speakers at colleges in the US. They pick a topic that's way too broad, that's way too general. And so the paper lacks coherence, it lacks direction. So you need to read up on the topic. You need to read up on the topic so you know where you're going. You have something interesting to say, something original, something unique, something informative. If your topic is too broad, and if you're not presenting any interesting ideas, you're not developing interesting ideas in enough depth, at least one paragraph per main idea with in-depth discussion, your paper is going to lack coherence. It might ramble, it might jump randomly and abruptly from point to point, or fail to discuss ideas in enough depth and detail, or to develop ideas. You need sources to write an intelligent paper, to present some interesting, unique, informative, worthwhile contents, and to make it coherent. You also, of course, need to provide support for your claims. So you kind of have claims or ideas in your body paragraphs. So the main ideas in your body paragraphs, the topic sentences, those are sort of like claims. And every claim, every point in your paper needs to be backed up with some kind of support. Support can be different things. It could be data, information, statistics of some kind, detailed explanation of your ideas, perhaps examples. Those are different kinds of support. Well, you can't just pull everything out of your head. You need to present interesting ideas or worthwhile information, and that's going to come from sources, mostly from sources. So you need to provide sources, you need to provide evidence for the various statements in your paper. You need enough evidence to make it credible and reliable. You need explanations for your ideas, maybe your analysis or your critiques or whatever. You need enough evidence. You need enough explanation. If you're proposing a solution, okay, how exactly are you going to do it? Provide some detailed explanation, and that's going to come from sources much of the time, as well as from your own ideas. Sometimes dealing with counterarguments. So for example, in one of the sample paragraphs in the book, this is not necessarily my idea, but the paragraph's example was trying to make an argument, but a brief one, about some kind of legal safeguards to protect users from fake information on social media. That's a controversial idea. Anytime you're dealing with ideas where there might be a clear difference of opinion, controversy, or readers are likely to be skeptical, you have to address their possible objections with counterarguments. So obviously, a person reading this, a lot of people would object and say, it's never a good idea for the government to regulate the free flow of information. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of expression. Those are basic to a modern democracy. Yet you can modify the argument and present specific ways based on sources, based on maybe proposals that exist out there that have been done, that have worked successfully, for maybe attempts by governments to not directly regulate the internet. So you're going to say, I'm going to be careful, but to maybe to put some kind of safeguards on fake news and the spread of fake news on social media. Controversial, you're going to have to be careful. You're going to deal with possible counter-arguments. So you can cite a possible objection. Mr. Smith argues such and such, which goes against my ideas. Fine, and then I'm going to cite Mr. Smith, and then I'm going to then cite Mr. Jones, who provides a good explanation for how we can be more careful here and do this in a way that doesn't violate people's fundamental freedoms. You can address potential objections to your ideas. You can cite them, or you can cite examples of how to deal with those objections in your papers. So it's very important to deal with possible counter-arguments. So let's get into dealing with sources, using sources. You need to use sources, but you need to avoid plagiarism. So plagiarism refers to copying and pasting or not giving credit. So maybe you're directly copying someone's words, or you're not giving credit to the source. Both are plagiarism. Of course, you're going to cite sources for things that are not common knowledge. If your reader probably knows it, if it's common knowledge, you don't cite it. But if it's unique information or ideas or data or something, you should cite it. And so, first of all, when it comes to citing sources, you're going to paraphrase or summarize these. Now, these are interchangeable because when you paraphrase, you shorten it a bit, which means you summarize it. When you summarize, you reword it in order to make it shorter, which means you paraphrase. These kind of go together. They're kind of two sides of the same coin. They're inseparable. So you paraphrase and summarize contents from the sources. Always paraphrase and summarize. Avoid direct quotations. Most of the time when I see students using direct quotations in papers, it's usually unnecessary. You would use a direct quotation only if a person's exact words are somehow very special or meaningful. If you're quoting Shakespeare, you're quoting Barack Obama, you're quoting an important person whose exact words are somehow meaningful. That's the only time you use direct quotations. Or you're quoting a poem in order to analyze a poem. Most of the time when I see college students trying to do direct quotations, it's not necessary. It's lazy, so please don't do it unless it's absolutely required. Please don't just plop down a direct quotation into paper. Summarize it and then explain why. Explain the information. Don't just plop it down in your paper. Paraphrase, summarize it, and then explain it. How does this support the point you're making in this paragraph? Say something about it. Don't just dump information into your paper. Say something about it. Explain the connection. How does this information support your idea? Or how are you going to address this information or these ideas from a source? Number two, we then, getting into sort of the mechanics, we use in-text citations. And I'll show some examples in a minute. So within the body of the essay, you need to cite the source. And a couple of ways I'm going to show you more next time. The easiest way is to use footnote citations. And I'm going to show you more details next time. Footnote citations. Yeah, you have a footnote in the text where your information is given, information from a source is given, and at the bottom of the page you have a brief footnote with brief information about the source. Another way is to put author and year in parentheses. I'm not going to go into detail on that in this semester. We deal with that more in my next writing class, the advanced writing class. For now, you can do that if you want to. I don't mind. You're welcome to do that in your final essay. I'm mainly going to teach the footnote system for citations. It's easier. In the footnote citation, the most common way is to give very brief information about the source. The author's last name, the title of the article or book that you're citing, maybe the year or the page number, and that's it. There are other ways of doing footnote citations we'll look at next time, but that's enough. But at the end of the paper, you need the full bibliographic information. That's what we call the works cited section or the references section. More often in humanities papers, you call it works cited. More often in science and social science papers, it's called references. Doesn't matter for now. You have the full bibliographic information about your source, and we'll look at that in a bit. So let's see some examples. I'm going to go over to my computer. As we see here, here's an example of the Chicago Manual style. The first sentence says, as readers read a text, they construct a mental model, da da da. And then here at the end of the information that is cited, you have the footnote, 1. Down below here, 1. You've got the author last name, the book. And there's some other books cited here. That's basically what you do for a source. And in number 2, helps readers construct an online representations of the meaning of a text. Number 2, you have author and title of an article. This is an article like from a journal or such. This is the Chicago Manual, which I'm mainly going to teach now. Again, you've got the number citations, the number footnotes. At the bottom, you have brief information about the source. At the end of the paper, the essay, you're going to have what's called works cited. And here you have full information about these sources. The authors, the title of the work, if it's from a magazine, here's the name of the magazine or journal, date, and pages and such. If it's a book, you're going to have maybe the author, the title, information about the where the book was published and when. That's basically what you're going to do. Now, there is an alternate version, and there are also other systems besides the Chicago Manual, where instead what you do is you put the author and year in parentheses in the text. If you want to do that, that's fine. I'm not really going to teach that this semester. I'll teach it next semester in the advanced class. You can do that too if you want to, if you're used to doing that. That's more common in social sciences and some kinds of science writing. Those are just some brief examples. I'm going to go into a little more detail next time. Those are kind of more academic examples. Next time I'll show you some other examples of the footnote citation system. So you need the footnotes in the text. And at the end of your paper, you need a references or works cited section. That's really important, where you need to give full information about each source used in the paper and only the sources used in the paper. Next time I'm going to go into some important caveats. Caveat, that's a good academic word. It means cautions, things you should be careful about, things you should be aware of. Caveat means things you should be careful about, things you should be aware of. Important caveats about using sources. I'll talk about some of the types of sources that are okay for college papers, kind of talk about what we talked about last week in terms of types of sources that are okay for papers. Talk a little bit more about the Chicago Manual citation system, and then maybe we'll look more at the examples from the book that you did an assignment on last week. Talk a little bit more about that. And that will prepare you and lead you into the next assignment. So one more paragraph assignment, third paragraph assignment, in case you don't know, that little symbol there is a symbol for paragraph. It's an old symbol used by typesetters and teachers, text editors. That means paragraph. So paragraph assignment number 3, not too hard. Just a brief paragraph. I want you to explain how you're going to revise your midterm paper and turn it into a final essay. So your final paper is going to be a revision of your midterm. Pretty much you have the same choice of topics. You can modify your topic if you want to. I'll let you do that. But I'm giving you kind of the same choice of topics. You should pay attention to the midterm feedback that I sent you and revise accordingly, revise based on that. So for the third paragraph assignment, you're going to basically explain to me how you're going to revise it, how are you going to improve your arguments, your main points, and what kind of sources. I want you to maybe find some more sources, especially some sources that are written in English, as well as in Korean. We'll talk about sources, those kinds of sources next time. Now, this won't be due, not this weekend, but probably the following weekend. So the weekend after week 14, I think, yes. So that gives you some time. And again, this is something you can directly incorporate into your final paper. The final paper will be due after the semester, after class is finished. The very last Monday of the semester, I think it's in like this kind of the Monday before the exam week or the makeup week. It's there's this kind of just one Monday. That's going to be an optional class day. You can log into Zoom and you can ask me questions, particular questions about your paper. We'll do that too. That's it for today. I'll post the assignment later in the LMS. Again, it's due not this weekend, but the following weekend. So you have enough time to work on it, not too hard. All right, ask me questions in the LMS assignment space or something, or the announcement space, and I will see you back on Wednesday where we will go into the stuff more in detail. All right, have a good day. See you later. Bye.